Sorry, I missed that nugget of info because I realized I was in charge of hitting the record and I was just listening to this conversation. Sorry, everybody. Uh, yeah, that's interesting stuff. Yeah, we had friends, Alyssa, who just moved like 3 months ago to Fort Myers.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were like, wow, okay. I mean, we were talking to Diane was talking to them last week, and they were like, we can't believe that they haven't had anything here for years and years, and we've been here for like 2 months, and here it comes.
Yeah, they've been, for whatever
It's weird.
reason, we've had hurricanes come north of them, south of them, across the Miami
Yeah.
area, the other direction up across Orlando, but Naples and Fort Myers have missed a direct hit until now. And
Yeah.
I mean, I did clinical rotations. I had family that lived down there when I was in school to be an OT, and you look at the pictures, the aerial pictures now compared to then, and it's like,
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. Yeah. I was getting some Hurricane Sandy flashbacks when I saw that, for sure.
yeah.
Our area, it had that same kind of just devastated look. Yeah, same idea.
Well, they sit at water level,
Yeah,
if not a little bit below,
if
in
not a
some
little
spaces.
below, right?
So it's when you add 7 foot, wake on top of that, it's
Not great. Not great at all.
no.
So, hello everybody. Hello everybody. How are we doing today? Kathy, hello. A new face we don't see all the time. Good to see you.
Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. Very good.
Thanks.
Excellent. I'm gonna get the my one sticky note out of the way so I can throw it away as we're talking. No town hall next week. Some people will have days off, so we're just not going to do it. And then on the 17th, October 17th, I'm looking at the group now for a facilitator. Who wants to be that person? Write it in your calendar.
I'll be on the drive to Closing the Gap.
Me too.
You too, Alyssa? Your microphone's muted. I don't want to miss a word of you saying, yes, I can do it.
I fly out that night. So
Could I maybe?
I just don't know for sure that I will be there is the problem. Like,
We'll figure it out. I'll post it up online too
Yeah.
and ask people to.
if there isn't another taker, I'm just worried I might be on the road when that
All right.
happens. So
That's fine. I'm really, I'm saving Naomi right now from just being in charge of it because I'm going to be on vacation. So I'm not going to be around. And I think by that time, I will have been away for almost 10 days and I might be debating whether to come back, period. So I might not. I mean, I might have been gone just long enough to be like, nope, I'm out. All right, we'll figure it out. I'll get somebody. Yeah, I keep forgetting that's the week of Closing the Gap.
Yeah.
I passed on Closing the Gap this year just because of that, because I knew I was going to be away, and it seemed like I'd probably have some work to do. That I can't just go off to a conference as I come back. So that'll be awesome. All right, so what would people like to talk about today? Sorry, I'm looking at my sprinkler guy. What do we think? What's happening? What's new and exciting?
I'll bring up a topic.
Please.
Jennifer, you jump in here, and Kathy too. We're trying to make some decisions about meetings this year with people. So pre-COVID, we had a group that met quarterly and people met in their regions in person. And then of course, COVID shut all that down and people got used to meeting online. And so then we have a variety of things that go on here in Wisconsin online monthly. And yet people had still asked in the spring, oh, when are we going to come back together? When are we going to come back together? But we're at this kind of funky part where people say they want it, but there's not a lot of help to do that. So I guess I'm wondering, have you all been doing anything in person and how's that going?
As other people think, I'll just start talking because I don't think first. I'll just talk. I think part of the stuff we've been doing, it's been hard to get people back into that swing of it. It's been hard. People, yes, they say, I want to do things live until that day comes. And then they're like, well, maybe I'll just call in. And so really for some of the things I'm working on, it's become a conversation of, kind of negotiable live things and non-negotiable live things. Like in order to move us forward, us as the whole group talks, in order to move us forward, the facilitators feel it would be beneficial for us to do it in person. And now you're gonna have to wait because now I gotta go see my sprinkler guy. Sorry.
Heard the dog bark, knew something was up, right?
Yeah, it's funny, Kelly, because after we talked the other day, I called a few people, talked to a few people, looked for some places, and a lot of places are like especially schools, because I don't work in a school anymore. They're like, nope, we close it all down. And they don't want a lot of people in the schools because they're afraid of, will COVID come back? How bad the flu is going to be. And a lot of the people I talked to said, it's kind of nice just to be able to go home and then click in, versus you got to stay here for another hour, hour and a half, and then I got to drive home, and then I got to make dinner. So, I'm seeing it still on that side of I'd rather not do in person, but
I'm totally not in person. I have a job and I live in Montana. I have a job in Port Orchard, Washington. I just started. So
But are you going in person, Mary?
no. So there's a coda on the other end.
Okay.
Hmm.
So it's all new.
It's interesting. This whole idea of, are the people you're working with feeling that they're missing that in-person thing? I'm going to guess no, if they want to keep being virtual.
Well, they want me to be there,
Yeah.
but I'm immunocompromised.
Yeah. So that's not going to be an option. Yeah. No,
It's
that makes
not, it's
sense.
not an option. So, but they want me to be there, but it's not gonna happen, so. They're short-staffed,
Yeah, and then people get, this is what we can get. Last year, we did a survey at the end of the year. Jennifer did a survey of our group, and people asked for, they were, and we're trying to honor that. People asked to go back in person from the kind of like the leadership team, right?
Mhm.
That's what they knew from their areas. But then when we had our first meeting, you're looking at two of the three people of the 12 that showed up, right? So then the working meeting really didn't produce those people that were the most vocal about, we want to be in person.
Does it, this is one of the questions I ask a lot of teams now. Do we need to be in person?
right. I'm in a Toastmasters club on Friday morning, and it's hybrid, and they do a super job of it being hybrid.
Yeah.
So, but I've seen hybrid meetings not work very well too. So,
Well, yeah, and we've all seen that difference. But I could rattle off 100 different things that in my mind are better about an in-person meeting.
well, the thing is that you have to be, for Toastmasters, you have to be prepared for what you're doing.
Right.
And a lot of people come unprepared to meetings, then it's not as productive in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could argue, Mary, that's any meeting, right? How many people come unprepared to participate?
Yeah.
Which is what makes this group so great, is there's no preparation. You just come and sit down. It's the best.
Best meeting I have all week long.
Best meeting I have all week. And whenever I can't go, I get mad because I'm like, wow, I didn't even have to prepare, and I would have looked right on track because I didn't need to prepare. So Kel, I'm guessing, do you need to have that group meet in person, or do you want to? Is that a need versus a want?
Well, I think that's what we're sitting on in the surveys, that people wanted to be back in person. But does it need to be? We've shown that we've done it for a year and a half online. It's gotten harder to get people as the time's gone on, where people were much more enthusiastic at the beginning of online, and then to the numbers that we've gotten more recently. That's probably for sure. I'm
My-
really curious to see how many people come in person to Closing the Gap. I'm real because with ATIA last year, we had 700 people online.
Yeah.
Right. There was almost as many people, more people online in some sessions than were physically in the room. Now, of course, that depended upon the sessions. There were rooms that, were totally
in
maxed out.
person.
Well,
of
pre-con,
in-person
is
people.
that pre-conferences, virtual's not doing for pre-conferences there?
Yeah, they don't do the, oh, I don't know, does Closing the Gap do pre-conference virtual?
No.
Okay,
Closing the
because I
Gap
knew
doesn't have any
ATIA didn't.
virtual option this
Yeah.
year.
Right, right.
Closing the Gap made the big choice to it's all in person or nothing. But I don't think that they also have the bandwidth, the staffing to be able to do both like ATIA does, right?
I totally got turned off with Closing the Gap when they gave me a whole stack of, quizzing to do after to get your certificate. I was like, oh my God, you just,
What was
They gotta
that
prove
for?
that you were there.
I've never been
Yeah.
quizzed at Closing the Gap.
oh no, this is like the pack this full of okay, what's this, going through the objectives and answering them correctly or not. And then they had to go through them all if people turned them in. I didn't turn mine in. So
Yeah, I don't know that part of Closing the Gap.
Yeah, I mean,
I
for
know I've
some,
had to do the 5 questions for every session.
right.
So for people that attend the session, they have to answer those 5 questions, but
well, and I mean, if you're going to answer them at the time and not
Yes.
when, and they didn't even have them available, at the time. So that turned me off. But anyways, my spouse has been working virtual. Well, he's retired now, but he started in 2010, and they work virtual all the time. And okay, but it's pretty ambitious group, kind of working 24/7 a lot of times, but they would go on vacations. We don't have to pay the money for the building, blah, 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 blah. So we will go on these outings, and then we go on outings for, like, it's kind of like a sabbatical, almost like a whole week. And then, they would then be able to discuss what they felt they wanted to discuss. And that worked out pretty good, as long as you went to a nice place.
Yeah, that's true, right? Kelly, for your group, are you bringing people from across the whole state to one spot, or is it regions?
regions.
Okay. Oh, well, that would have made it easier. So, okay.
Sorry. I've
Feels
been
like an
having
easier
tech
pull for
issues here.
people. Sorry, Jen.
No, I've just been having tech issues. So I think, Kathy, like speaking to you, it sounded like you were trying to arrange something after the school day, and that when we've been done them virtually, they have been after the school day. That was some of the feedback we got, and different regions did it differently. It depended on who the host was, and if their employer would allow them to use school time. So I always had Fridays off working part-time. So then I would hold our regional meetings on Fridays. So I would do it on my own time, but there were other regions where people were holding them within the workday. And that's actually, since I'm back full-time, that was what we're going to do this year, is hold them full-time. And I got approval from my employer to hold them in our district building and to hold them during the workday. And that was what people liked, even pre-COVID, is most people wanted to do them and be released from their work time, because that is what I think they felt they had the mental capacity to really devote to that time. And the piece of that, we would always do sort of like a continuing ed sort of hour, where we were learning about something together, assistive technology wise. And then we would have an hour sort of networking. And the
Right.
networking component was what was always people wanted more of. Like, we wish we could just really like sit and chat, because it was sort of, how often do these smaller districts have that job alike with somebody else, where they, if you're in a small district, I'm fortunate to be in a bigger district and have other coworkers doing assistive technology to bounce ideas off of, but a lot of our smaller districts didn't have that. So that was their time that almost turned into like a grand round sort of thing, where, hey, I'm struggling with a student, and you know, like, what would you do? And it was nice because you had people then, and you had this network. And then what would happen is I get emails from people saying, hey, Jennifer, like, I've got this situation. What would you do? Even when it was outside of those quarterly meetings. So I think there's a lot of benefit to continuing them. But when we first started the regional meetings, what we found is there was no continuing ed. Now Kathy has a group that she leads in Wisconsin that does continuing ed through our AP Forward project. We have an ECHO project going on in the state that's providing continuing ed. So I think there's less of a need for the continuing ed, but we still have sort of this area of networking that isn't really being addressed as much. And that was what people really value. So what Kelly and I and one of our other colleagues kind of focused in on is we can still provide this networking component to add to what our state is now doing, but it's still trying to find that way to get everybody to connect. And again, I think it really comes like, and then it's release time. Like this year, we have so many staff that are subbing in our district because we're having staffing shortages still. So it's a little different than even a few years ago where you could be released and have time to go to something in person. Now there's so many components to staffing within, I think, our whole state really. And I don't know what things are like in your regions, but we just have a lot of teacher shortages right now. So it makes it harder to attend in-person events.
Yeah,
Yep.
it definitely makes it hard, right? That whole point of, I think the thing we found throughout COVID, which is now causing us this friction when we're now trying to return back to what it was like, is people have realized how productive they could be in a day if they didn't have to go anywhere. And you could shift gears. Like I could sit with us for 45 minutes and then at 1 o'clock, I could shift gear to another thing and I didn't have to get in my car and go anywhere. I'm just there and I'm also participating there, which I think has value. But that networking piece, when you're in person like that, I mean, it does, unfortunately, Jennifer, feel like it's the first thing to go. It's the first thing someone's like, that doesn't seem as important. Where we could argue it's the most important thing.
Yep. When you're stressed out,
Yeah.
you know, I do think, and that's probably what I'm looking forward to at Closing the Gap the most is that networking piece again, because I've missed it the last few years.
Yeah. Right.
I think too, like the engagement with online learning is totally different. I feel like I'm pulled in a million directions. So if I'm in my district and I'm trying to attend a training online, I'm also checking my email and I'm getting phone calls and I can run here for a quick check-in, or I'm not fully engaged in that learning like I am if I'm in person. I think that's a difference too. And I think you see that in being someone who's done the online training, like it's crickets sometimes, you know, or everything drops off when suddenly you go into a breakout room because people are people are still in the main room because they're, you know, like dividing their attention.
Right. They've kind of stepped away and they're just sitting in the main room and they haven't moved over. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And you're not really here, are you?
Exactly. You're here, but you're not here right now.
You know, and you see all that, and I feel like my attention is so much more divided. So I feel like I get maybe a lot more out of those in-person trainings, but it's trying to find that balance of like, how do I make it doable again?
I think that's so true. And I don't know if we're giving you all any answers to figure out how to do this, but it's hard. It is hard. It's finding your champions to realize that is important. And the reason I said that before is that I had an administrator who said, that's not something I want my staff to be spending their time on. This kind of networking conversation piece. And, you know, we went through all the conversations of this is why it's important. This is what it could do to help them. It's going to alleviate stress and help them problem solve and make them more creative as they move forward. Because they're going to get that sense of how other people have done things and they were just having no part of it.
Does it have to be either or?
Well, that's a
Could
good
it be
question
both
too.
and? Like, could you do a October in-person gathering followed by November and December virtual, followed by an in-person, followed by?
So we have like, I don't know, probably 5, 6, 7 regions, I've lost track, but Kelly is actually going to host our online region. So for people that can't make an in-person meeting, and they want to join me online, then we have that.
So that'll
and-
happen during the live sessions. Is that what you're saying? Kelly, you're going to manage that during a
Okay,
live
just
section
like-
or no?
You have
Well,
to
all
write-
the live sessions happen on different days because each region kind of picks their own date.
Yeah,
And so then what we were looking to do was to have the online session after those regional dates,
I got you.
so that
Okay.
people that weren't able to make the live,
Yeah.
not to try and take away from the live,
Mhm.
right? And so then offer that piece of it.
I really like that also because I like that idea that that follow-up day is also potentially a chance for some of those people that came to the live session to reflect a little and then check back in. And maybe sell it that way too. That's actually really interesting. Yeah, I like that. The minute you say that that's how it's going to run, I'm like, oh, I like that a lot. Because then I can kind of hear, because you would have been at the meeting, right? One of you would have, or at least talked to each other and figured out what had been said.
Well, if Kathy has a live meeting, I'll go to that one, but I'm not
Okay.
driving 3 hours up to Green Bay to go to that one.
Fair enough. But you'll have somehow communicated, like Jennifer would say to you, oh, here's the things that we talked about, and give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of what the group was discussing that you could then have for that virtual meeting and say, oh, one of the groups that Jennifer was hosting had brought this up. Does anybody have thoughts on that? And it is a way to tie them together. I think
mean,
it's
in a
really
way,
great.
It's very much like what we're doing right now.
It's exactly.
We're doing it right now across the country. And we're trying to make connections just within our region so that people get to know other people. I mean, we're in silos. We're so isolated sometimes in our own district. And it was really comforting to a lot of people to start networking and learning from other people around them that were doing similar jobs. So
Yeah, I think you're right. It is like this, but it's
It's
better
very
than this in a
structured.
sense. Yeah, it's
also
better
very
than this.
unstructured,
Yeah,
so.
you have an opportunity to actually see each other. Like
Mhm.
there is a potential to actually see the other people.
And the other component is we would sometimes bring a vendor in, so we could learn about different AT tools that were out there. Now, again, we're trying to simplify things maybe this year because just not getting the attendance, getting things restarted, feeling like there's now overlap where we used to have more of that need for continuing ed. So we're trying to kind of just create another separate niche, but I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how the year turns out. We have to evolve and we have to keep, constantly changing things to meet the needs of the current
There is that component of if each of those live meetings had a small, I hate to even call it this, but a presentation piece, whether it's a vendor or one of the team members, whoever it is, doing something where they're sharing something that could you then massage that into calling it professional development? And maybe would others,
Well, that's what
i.e.
we did.
gatekeepers, say, oh, that seems important.
That is originally what we did is we
Yeah.
had a small presentation and then we had a vendor and then we had the networking time. But, now to sort of meet the different needs of the time again, like we have the AT Forward project in Wisconsin that's doing some of that training. We have the ECHO project that's now picked up and doing some of that training. So we did discuss maybe even like after having one of those, hey, watch or attend one of those meetings, and then we can discuss during our regional meetings. Some of those.
That's a good way to look at it too, right? It's this idea of it's a continuation of these other activities we're assuming you're all participating in.
And the problem is, I don't think those activities are getting super high attendance either, because now there's so much different stuff going on. So it's trying to not overlap necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went in Wisconsin from being the void of Waddy for 10 plus years. Now, some regions like the region Kathy's in, that person who was an ex-Waddy person kept that region going. And so they still had meetings and things like that, but most of the state did not.
Yeah.
And so this Wadern group filled a big void. And then the money came in, the federal funds came in, And then a UDL project was started up, an AT Forward project was started up. Our WISTech group got more active. So it's, lots of things started happening that started to take away from, people were having what, Jennifer, 25, 30 people at meetings when it first started.
Yeah, I think
in
my
person.
latest meetings were like around 35 to 40 people. So we were
Yeah.
getting pretty good attendance. Not every region was like that. We had a larger geographic area. So we had people coming and they really liked them. It was really an active, fun group.
So given all of the other PD that's now available in that area, is it that the reason for the meetings needs to shift, or the format for the meetings need to shift, or the what happens at those meetings need to shift? If there's not a need to present the same PD in the same way, since Echo or whoever else is doing that, does it need to be, does the structure or purpose need to change?
I think that's why we were talking about the most important part that's missing out of some of the others is the networking piece, right? That being able to discuss cases, that type of stuff.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like it's an implementation part for that other PD. It's like, okay, you've seen this PD, now what? And moving that conversation forward. You could look at it as like flip learning, and yours is that part's the flip. The learning happens somewhere else, and then the application of it happens when you guys get together.
And I think that the virtual conversation is just never what it is in person. Again, we've got people who are half listening. When I'm attending some of our AT Forward meetings, it's during that time where I need to be making dinner and getting the kids onto their activities. So I'm multitasking. I've got my AirPods in, I'm listening on my phone, but am I really truly actively engaged all the time? No. If I go to a meeting in person and we're sitting down at a table and we're all having a conversation, that looks totally different. And so that's where trying to get that engagement piece back into it. And I contracted and worked on the AT Forward project, so I can speak to it. And Kathy helps coordinate it as well. But I think the engagement for a lot of those meetings, everybody's listening, but they're probably doing what I'm doing, or they're driving and commuting home and listening. So it just looks different. You don't have that interaction that you have when you're in person. So I think, to me, that's what I want to get back to. That's what I want the purpose of those meetings to be. And originally, that is what people, when we did surveys after the meeting, felt was the most important component, was that networking and getting back. So it's just now, with the way staffing is in buildings, are we going to be able to get back? What will that attendance look like?
Yeah, it's tricky because part of it is, I'm going to guess, out of your control, and that's that release time. Are people going to be able to do that? And then I wonder, I'm going to use our model here for a second and think about it. Think about our best attended town halls and what's different about them. We call them a special event. And suddenly everybody shows up, and yet it's kind of the same thing. It's maybe a little focused, like it has that little presentation piece. That's what makes it a special event. But the flow of the hour is not that much different. It's not that changed. And I wonder if that's not a way to kickstart participation. Is, oh, we're hosting in Kathy's region a special event in person. Join us. Then you get them there, you've hooked them in, you trick them in the best possible way. And then maybe they recognize that piece that they've been missing, which is that networking piece, which is so critical, and just how it's different in a live event.
I think sometimes too, it's the recording part of it. As part of the AT Forward grant, we have to record them. Because that's part of the grant, is that they need to be up there for other people to listen to later on. And we try to be very open and upfront in the beginning and say, if you're going to talk about a kid, remember, what we really need to do is good AT people, and let's not make any identifiers or anything else about this child, because we don't want to breach that confidentiality that's going on. So I think that really makes people go, whoa, I'm not going to talk about anything then. which makes it difficult. And we do always try, like with the slate meetings and other things, is just, we're gonna hang on after the normal time and shut the recording off and say, okay, we're here, you know, if you want to talk to us, you know, bounce ideas off. And we've gotten some people who have stayed on for over half an hour, but like Kelly and I, we were just talking the other day that come 5 o'clock, you can just watch everybody go thunk, 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 and they're gone, you know. Or like, you know, you said before that, you know, I've been doing some presentations and I'm like, it's crickets out there, just like you said, Jennifer, and you're like, and then I'll stop sharing my screen and go, are you all there? Are you still there? You know, you got all these blank screens and you're like, anybody out there?
Because nothing scares people more than when the presentation screen stops sharing and it's back to the Brady Bunch grid. Nothing scares people more. They're like, whoa, something big just happened. And then they're really, I did it the other day. I was watching, so it's a Bueller thing, right, Kelly? I was watching something on another computer and working over here. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw it turn to this grid. And I was like, what's going on? Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm here and I'm listening. I don't know what they were talking about at the time. I'm doing Jennifer's move. I was doing two different things. And so, you know, there's that negative piece of the of being virtual. I do like the not recording it. I think there is a component of that that makes people feel a little bit more comfortable, says the guy who pushed record on this button on this one, but the whole, that's, you've accepted that fact. But I think for some of those regional smaller groups, there is a comfort level when there is no record of it.
Well, and I think too, like people that are attending, they're not always confident in their AT knowledge, especially when they're
right.
coming from a small district and maybe they're the speech therapist in the district or they're the OT and they're the teacher and they don't have that expertise or whatever because they don't have an AT person maybe. And so for them, it's making them feel safe and that their vulnerability and admitting to some of like their questions, you know, that when it's recorded, there's documentation that you didn't know, or at least that's what's perceived. I mean, not that anybody would say, oh, I can't believe you didn't know that, but I don't know, like I think that in person, knowing it's not being recorded, knowing that you could just deny that you ever said that, like
That's
there's
right.
no
Exactly. And Jennifer, think about how many times in a live meeting, even one of those networking things, you lean to the person next to you and have a really small conversation. And that never happens here. It just doesn't. And so we've lost that piece completely. And if you could say, what are some of the worst things about virtual meetings? That to me is the worst thing about a virtual meeting. Look, you're all stuck listening to me right this second. And yeah, Kelly, you can chat in the chat, but wouldn't it be even better to just be, Kelly, you know, I've sat next to you at enough conferences, you know, the kind of the lean in and you have a quick conversation and then you move back out and you're back in. And those kind of networking moments are the perfect spot for those kind of things to happen. But how to make people realize that's the most important thing to happen is the trick.
And I think when other people are leaning into that vulnerability and they're admitting, oh, I don't know how to do this. And then you see all those heads start shaking and meeting, and you're looking at the body language of people when you're in person. And that makes you feel safe in order to share maybe some things that you're insecure about in your own practice. And so I think you don't know who's standing over here on the side of my screen, you know, so I think it's
I had one of those at ATIA once, sitting next to somebody, and they leaned in and they said, do you know what that means? Because they assumed that I was going to know. And I said, I don't have a clue what that means. They're like, really? I said, I don't know. Let's ask. Let's one of us ask. And that person said, great, why don't you ask? And I said, okay, I'll ask, and that's fine. But yeah, those kind of things that happen. And those are the connections you want to make, because those people will have that little bond all of a sudden. And it's the, oh, if you need anything, reach out, let me know. And we can keep that conversation going. Those really only happen from those.
And even like right now, like I see Alyssa and Kathy nodding their head and Carol.
Yeah.
You know, like you're getting that, but how many meetings are you in with everybody's cameras off? And you aren't able to sort of assess and get that feedback that you sometimes need it so much.
Is anybody Is anybody still using for their virtual meetings? Are you still using Kumo Space? No, huh? I keep thinking that's the most powerful piece of that is the drifting away. Here we go, and we've drifted over here, and now we're the only two that can hear it, but then we can drift back into the rest of the conversation. And it does mirror closer that live experience. Again, the problem for me continues to be their accessibility is kind of garbage. It's just, there's none. And that sucks. But
Well, and I
No,
like Kelly's idea because I think a lot of us do use it, is that, and maybe we just need to even say those things out loud, that don't forget to use the chat.
yeah, right.
When I was in a meeting at this tech, that other Slate meeting, it was funny because the presenter said, well, you guys were very quiet during the whole thing. And then somebody chirped up and said, oh no, there was this humongous conversation going on in the chat where all of us were like commenting on different things and asking questions and stuff like that. So sometimes I think there's more going on, but we don't always know it. And as a presenter, you know, it sometimes is tough, and it's tough to shift your, you know, you're presenting and then you're like, whoops, I'm in the chat. And then unless you've got a co-presenter, sometimes it's difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult, but I think as the presenter or the facilitator, I think we have to dip a toe in the chat and keep that. I mean, I keep it up the whole time, and I may not answer everything that comes up, but I do see them as they pop up. And I think, because you're right, Kathy, that whole idea of there have been virtual sessions I've been in where the chat's been 1,000 times better than the session. And I'd rather live in the chat because it's better information. But it was never brought to the main session.
Well, but we all know it's an acquired skill to be able to
I know.
present, have the
I know.
conversation about the presentation and monitor the chat at the same
Yes.
time. If you're a solo presenter, that's a big ask cognitively on
Yeah.
you. If you have two people, then at least it's
Yes.
like when I'm not talking, I know my job is be attentive to the chat, the
Yeah.
task. It's why I would much prefer presenting with somebody else, because online it's impossible to give good focus to both things at the same time.
Yeah, it is. I agree. And yeah, there is that need for like a partner in crime there to just be
Well, and then
comfortable
there's
enough chiming in.
and then there's question and answer, and then they address those at the end. You know, that type
that's
of
their style.
format. Yeah.
I seem to answer them as I go. I always feel like if someone asks it in that moment, it might be related to that moment. So why not just get it in there, and it might spur someone to think of something else. Or my fear always with that question and answer or things that are left till the end. I always wonder about that person who asked the question. Did I just take them out of the rest of the conversation because they couldn't get past that one thing they just needed an answer to? I was doing it for a parent meeting the other night, and the host had said, wait till the end to answer the questions. And I had said, thank you, but I'll probably look at them as we're going. And if I see something, I might answer it, but others I might just leave till the end. I'll kind of see how they're falling down. And sure enough, one of the parents asked in the middle of things, wait a second, is this free for us? And the answer was yes. And I feel like if I hadn't answered her that moment, I don't know that she would have paid attention to the rest, like, oh, I can't afford that, or I don't have that covered. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, this is free. Now listen to some of this other stuff we can do. And I think that was really helpful. But yeah, Alyssa, I feel what you're saying there is that it's an acquired skill, and it's better done with a co-pilot.
And I know we've talked about it before, but the other way is to pre-record and then play the recording, and then you're online with the recording, and then know that people
I'm
haven't
not
liked
a
that, but I'm
fan.
telling you, I like it.
Oh, I don't like
Because
it at all.
You can
I-
just be.
I
typing
don't like
away.
listening to myself
That's it.
present. I think that's the
Oh.
piece of it. But if you
Never
turn the
that.
volume down, then you miss what it is that they may be asking a question about. So
Right.
I think, and maybe that's just my own
No, I'm with you.
thing. Because there were a couple of conferences that did that exact methodology. And I just couldn't get used to it was not a preferred method of doing things for me.
I've also found if it's a recording and I'm in the chat, I'll announce that to the group at the head of it
Yeah.
and not just start answering, because then there people are like, well, how are you doing? How are you talking and writing? Like, and then that takes them out of it also. So I might say, this has been pre-recorded and I'll pop into the chat and I'll add other stuff or we'll continue on that conversation. But yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I liked it because I could fix things that I said.
Yeah.
And then immediately give people resources, because I know that not everybody downloads the handout and
Right.
does the links off of a handout. And so if you can throw them right into the chat, and that's the value of having a co-presenter, as
Exactly.
Alyssa's saying, is that you can do that a lot. But when you're alone, it's not too bad to like try it another way.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I'm with Alyssa. I don't like hearing myself talk about it. And when I'm talking right now, I'm not listening to myself. So it's perfect. Good. Yeah, that's fun. Well, I don't know,
Well-
Kelly, Jennifer, Kathy, do we solve any of your problems?
Well, I don't know about solve, but you certainly gave us more to think about. I was just thinking, I'll throw out to the group too, that I know with our AT Forward meetings that one of the things I really want to do is increase that interactivity during the meeting and that networking, because those are all virtual throughout our state. So, if people have other ideas, I think that I'm going to announce on the first one that we're going to do that. Hey, we're monitoring that chat. You got questions? Ask. You got comment, please throw it in there right away. Don't wait till last. And I think that will help. But if others have other ideas, because again, I think that recording, a lot of times people are like, I'm not going to say anything. I don't know. Anybody got any other ideas?
I think that's really good. I think Kathy, giving people a free reign to put anything they want in the chat, which might end up being conversations for later, and maybe not even answering all of them during a session because of that fear of people don't want to talk about and be recorded, but maybe another group, a smaller group of the facilitators gets together and answers those and posts those up somewhere. Like, oh, we got this question at one of our last meetings, and the question was, and you kind of, paraphrase it or kind of fix it however you want. And then some facilitators have a 5-minute conversation about that and post that up somewhere. It feels like the group is being responsive to the people that are in it. And maybe people who would be afraid to participate will feel that this maybe is not so scary to participate. And it's a small chunk. And that's always helpful too, because it's small and it's short.
Even at our in-person meetings, we always have sort of that back channel chat, like at least in the meetings that I was facilitating, for people that didn't feel comfortable like raising their hand or saying something out loud. You can post your question, wherever. So we had different methods of doing that. And I think that's still same concept here. If you're not willing to post your question, can you do it anonymously within a Padlet? Like something like that. I think there's value to whether it's in person or virtual.
Because I think ultimately, whether, that whole thought, if someone gets up the courage to ask their question, it almost in a way doesn't matter if it happens during the session or after, and they still get some kind of response to it. And they don't hear one of you saying, which I know you wouldn't say, but this whole point of this is that fear, oh, that was not a great question. But instead, taking their question and being very thoughtful about providing them some concrete steps to go forward, those could be very powerful for that person the next time they come. Oh, last time I put it in the chat or I sent it anonymously and the group answered it. And it was such a great answer. I'm assuming it would be a great answer from you guys. It's a great answer. Next time when I come, maybe I'll follow up, or maybe we'll bring another thing that I'm struggling with. And I think all of those things can lead to those next steps of bringing those people in, because ultimately you have to build that trust with them over time. And it's hard. I mean, even in this group, we see a lot of the same faces. So the trust is already there that no one's going to be critical of someone. Like, I'm not going to attack Carolyn right now. I might, but I'll do that on the chat. I won't do that out loud. But that whole idea of thinking about, oh, this is a space where I can come to learn and share. But I think it takes some time. Meanwhile, that time is much quicker if you're in person, in my mind. I always feel like it is.
Look,
This
I
takes a
s-
lot longer.
Yeah, I see that the AT Forward, I just looked it up, it's a project in Wisconsin. Is there any other states that has AT Forward as a project?
I don't know. Kathy, is there? Jennifer, is
Uh,
there?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it's, you know, it came through our COVID funding, you know, it came through those ESSER funds, you know, and we started it, this is our fourth year, Jennifer? Something like that, 3, 4, third. It's my second year as being one of the co-chairs. We do, you know, we put everything online so everybody can get at it, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're in the state of Wisconsin. We do offer free micro credentialing too, that we're offering. You know, we've done some other things, like we're looking at some of the old WADI paperwork and bringing that back and trying to post that, because, you know, there were 100 of us that went through all that 10 years ago. And, you know, a lot of people have gone or left or retired or whatever, and it got lost. So now we're trying to re-envision that, because so much of it is excellent. It just needs a little tweaking and updating, because people always think it's about the stuff, and it's not. You know, we all know that it's not the stuff. It's, you know, it's what we do with it. It's how we assess, it's how we look at things. It's all that task analysis part. But, you know, I can I'll put that in the chat. I'll put the link in, and anybody's welcome to come and join us.
Fun.
Hmm.
Ooh,
What
now
time
that
is
you
it?
Threw that out there. It's too late now. I'm in.
So
It's they're 4 to 5.
Oh, I'm out.
You know,
I work till 5
well,
till-
you know what though, Mike? Everything gets recorded, so you can pick it up later. So it takes us a couple weeks because we got to transcribe it and you know, closed caption it, because we're very, very careful about accessibility for anyone. And then we also the transcribing into Spanish and stuff takes a little bit, but yeah, all the old ones are up there. So, and we divided them into short little segments. So like if you only got 15 minutes, you can do a 15-minute section and then maybe go back later and then pick up the other ones and we kind of subtitle them. Just made life a little easier.
And those are, Kathy, those are all video. It's not just audio.
Correct. Those are video.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's also some, you know, there are some podcasting and stuff that we've done too, but most of them are video.
I was at a small school district here, and I live in Kalispell, Montana, and they use the WADI for a boy with muscular dystrophy. It worked pretty well. So
Good stuff. It's great stuff. I'm glad that
Yeah.
it's finding its way back into people's communities again. Marilyn, go ahead. Sorry.
So no, you're fine. So we don't have something as formal as the AT Forward, but we have something called the AT Lunch and Learn, and that was brought up because of COVID, where there were 5 or 6 representatives across the state who would get together to kind of just lead a lunch and learn. And initially it was bring whatever is going on. So initially it was, how do we get technology to students who are at home? And it was meeting weekly in 2020. But clearly, like, the need for meeting weekly kind of tapered off. Now they're meeting quarterly throughout the year. So there's 4, and they're in the process of hopefully planning an in-person meeting in November. So Michigan's divided into 5 regions. And we try to get representation on that leadership planning committee from all 5 regions. I think it's 4 of the 5 right now. And we also try to be really conscious about if it's someone newer to the field versus someone who's been in the field for a long time, because we're trying, AltShift kind of started it, but we're pushing it back to the sites. Like, the people who are actually working in the schools understand the need of what's going on in the schools more than I do, being, you know, thrice removed. So they brought in, I think last year they really focused on accessibility features. So they brought in someone from Microsoft to talk about accessibility, from Apple. They did a whole session about Google, but it's only an hour session and it's during lunch. So most people just try to join virtually right through their lunch hour. And if you can come, great. If not, it's recorded, but it's more, they put in, it's hard for an hour, right? You try to get some sort of PD, but they put in a lot of content and try to sneak in some networking where you get to chat with other people, but it's not as long because sometimes some of that content runs over. But that's what we're doing in Michigan right now. It's not as formal, but it's something educator run, which is nice.
What is
Does
it?
anybody from the DPS come and join you?
From Detroit Public Schools. Yeah. Yeah. Dr.
good.
Caesar joins us from Detroit Public Schools.
Dr. Who?
Caesar, she's one of the AT consultants down there.
Okay,
And a
because
lot
I
of
know
staff.
the special education director there, so
Okay.
I'll let her know.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's nice is that initially our AT lunch and learns were only open for, it was kind of more of an exclusive club. It was the ISD AT specialists only, and they've really opened it up to welcome a lot of different educators. The one perspective, the main perspective that I think we're missing is families, but we haven't quite figured out how to bridge that gap quite yet. So not to say that they aren't invited, it's just so far it's more on educator supporting students.
Carolyn, did you see Jennifer's question about how,
I
what's
do
your,
see
what's your
that.
attendance?
It varies, but it's probably 40 each month before the networking piece starts, and then you see people like dropping off before the breakout rooms open up. But yeah, I think this last meeting was about 40. We're hoping for more than that for the in-person. I think everyone's itching to be in person. Pre-COVID, we would meet twice a year in person just to see. A lot of it was networking. And you'd get random little mini sessions of content and people just sharing out.
We announce all of our sessions, ahead of time. We do what I would love to call a newsletter, with our Department of Public Instruction calls an update every month. But I just write, something, and it tells like who is speaking on what, in what date, and then you can of course sign up for them. We get anywhere, the high end is like 50, 60, and the low end could be as low as 10, But then you go back and you see the nice fact that people have watched the recordings, which is nice too.
Yeah. I mean, that's helpful. It reminds you that, that it's not necessarily the topic all the time. It's just where that topic falls for people. And just their overall ability to get to it.
Yeah, we have a listserv here in Michigan that it's the AT context listserv, and that has really boomed in the last few years, and that's where all of that information is shared. So it is nice. The age old stop replying all, please stop replying all. But for the last one, I know that there were several people who weren't able to make the meeting who are excited to watch the recording. So as long as we're sharing out about it, we know that people are still getting contact about that.
I like your number sense wheel. You're familiar with that?
Yeah, from Foundations of Math. Mhm.
Yeah. And I just
Yeah.
wondered if I could incorporate it into some of my occupational therapy, because I like the idea of time management and that type of thing. Using timers, visual timers too, to see the timer going around. Is there somebody I can bounce ideas off of?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll send you. I just saw you direct message me. I'll
Okay.
give you for our math accessibility specialists name and
Okay.
for sure.
Mimi. Okay, thank you.
All right, everybody, as we come to the top of the hour, final thoughts. We've done it. We've done everything we could. All right, great. Take the rest of the afternoon off, everybody. Good work. All right, well, I'll let you go a couple minutes early. Why not? Now you're not rushing to another meeting. You're actually
Happy
getting there on
Monday.
time. Have
Oh,
you
Thanks,
seen-
you didn't put in the chat the lunch and learn. Where do I look at for lunch and learn? Carolyn?
Okay,
For
I'll give you the link.
ours, send me your email address. I'll add you to the listserv. That's where they share all the updates for that.
Oh, okay.
It's mostly Michigan educators that come to it. So yeah, I
Mhm.
can add you right to the listserv.
Yeah, I did in the previous chat, so.
Oh, yep, I see it. Perfect. I'll be sure to add you.
Get those
Thank
things
you.
written down from the chat. Everybody else, remember, no next week. We're off next week. So if you're off, enjoy the day off. If you're not, get some work done, I guess. I don't know. Or don't, I don't know.
It's enough.
And we'll be back on the 17th, but I will search valiantly for a facilitator for that day because I won't be here. So thank you all. I look forward to that recording. And as always, it was great seeing you all. Thanks. We'll see you later.
Thanks, everyone.
See you
Have a great
later.
day.